The Falcons might want to give the Bears a call and trade for Tremaine Edmunds if they can't get a deal done with Kaden Elliss.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network in all of the galaxy. And I am your humble host, Aaron Freeman, aka Sirius Black, been covering the Falcons for 2 decades, formerly at FalcFans.com, RIP. Still going strong here on Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. And on today's daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, we are talking about a potential discount the Falcons could get on a Tremaine Edmunds trade if they go down that road. Should the Falcons be looking to get younger at linebacker rather than re-signing Kaden Elliss, or should they take advantage of this deep 2026 draft class at that position? But we bring this up because the Falcons might be in the market for a new starting linebacker. Much has been made of Ian Cunningham's non-committal comments about Kaden Elliss the other day. My read was it was kind of a fancy way of him saying no comment when he was asked about Kaden Ellis' future in Atlanta. But, you know, we talked about this on the Falcons squad a couple of shows back. And there's basically a number that the Falcons want to get Kaden Elliss back at, you know, in terms of his money. And there's a number that Kaden Elliss and his representations want to get this offseason. And we'll see if they agree on that number. We'll see how far apart they are on that number, you know, but it's like, okay, I've seen projections for $8 million a year for Kaden Elliss, $12 million a year for Kaden Elliss. All right. And so looking on the outside, you just go like, oh, well, just compromise at $10 million and the deal is done. That obviously makes sense to those of us, but like that's rarely as simple as that. And so, you know, there is going to be probably an increased sense of urgency to re-sign Kaden Elliss, given James Pierce's situation and trying to use Kaden Ellis's ability as a blitzing linebacker to supplement a four-man rush, because we don't know necessarily 100% certainty if James Pierce is going to be around this season. But, you know, I think overall the Falcons would love to get younger at the linebacker position. I think that's going to be a goal this offseason. We'll talk later about how the draft comes into play, but I think that's where we can start the conversation about Tremaine Edmunds, who is going to be 28 this May. That's about 3 years younger than Kaden Elliss. He's going into the final year of a contract he signed with the Bears back in 2023, right? And the Bears have basically given him permission to explore his trade options, and any acquiring team in a trade for Tremaine Edmunds would basically be inheriting him on a 1 year, $15 million deal. He signed an $18 million deal back in 23. And when you factor in that, you know, Jamie Sherwood and Nick Bolton signed for $15 million a year last offseason as, you know, the high-end linebackers. And, you know, I think Zach Bond was like $19 million a year or something like that. You know, $15 million is kind of a relative bargain, I guess you could say. You know, Edmunds is a physical freak. If you thought Divine Diablo was freakishly built at 6'3", 240 pounds with a 79-inch wingspan, well, Tremaine Edmunds is 6'5", 250 pounds with an 83-inch wingspan. He's basically Kyle Pitts, just like an inch shorter in terms of his frame and build. And for someone like Jeff Ulbrich, we know that he loves those physical type freaks at the linebacker position. And so Edmunds makes sense as a potential plug-and-play starter for this football team. The issue is going to be, what do you have to give up to get him via trade, right? And I don't think you're going to have to give up a ton, right? I'm listening to Locked On Bears, my guy Lauren Cox. For the Bears, like, it sounds like they're going to cut Tremaine Edmunds if they can't work out a trade before the start of the league year, right? And so in theory, if you're asking for a trade for Tremaine Edmunds, you can kind of lowball the Bears because they're going to just basically take something for nothing, right? Could that be a fifth, a sixth, a seventh round pick? You know, we can speculate. Now, the Falcons do not have a fifth round pick in this year's draft, but I'm sure you're sitting there asking, why would we trade for him if he's going to get cut anyway? And basically the answer is you leaping to the front of the line, right? You still have to outbid other teams, but like at least now you're basically taking Tremaine Edmunds' choice out of this equation. You're like, we want him, and so you can trade for him. And if he gets cut, now all of a sudden he becomes a free agent. Now he has a choice. And in theory, 31 other teams are potentially competing for you and potentially can outbid you for his services at that point in time. And so the value of trading for him is basically like, we're leaping to the front of the line so that we can get him, right? You know, I think you kind of call up the Bears and say, hey, let's have a little chat. Let's get a lay of the land. See, what are other teams offering? What can we offer you? And then if you're the Falcons, if you're Ian Cunningham, right, you say, but our first priority, we're going to try to get a deal done with Kaden Elliss, but we might have to call you back. And then we get to March 9th. I believe that's the Monday when the legal tampering period begins. And if the Falcons haven't gotten a deal done with Kaden Elliss by then, the chances aren't great that he's going to get a deal done between then and the start of league year. And that's maybe when you give the Bears a call back and you say, yeah, okay, it's not going our way with Caden's negotiations. So here's our offer. Maybe you get him for a 6th-round pick. I think that's potentially worthwhile, especially, given Ian Cunningham's draft philosophy. And we should be able to recoup 6th-round picks with some trade backs on draft day. So, we won't necessarily miss that if we wind up having to give that up in March. We should be able to get that back in April. But, I'm sure that, Tremaine Edmunds is among several Bears players that I'm sure we will spend plenty of time over the next weeks and months speculating about potentially, finding their way to become future Falcons, right? Tyson Bagent, the quarterback, is probably someone that I'm sure many of you are waiting for bated breath. Like, Aaron, why haven't you talk about Tyson Bagent being a quarterback option? It's like, we'll probably get there. It's probably something that we'll get to next week on the podcast. I'm kind of waiting to see kind of what other buzz kind of emerges out of the combine when it comes to the Falcons quarterback situation, right? Like that was the situation 2 years ago, right? We were on this podcast talking about the Falcons getting Kirk Cousins for 4 weeks prior to the combine, but the rest of the NFL finally started picking up on the Kirk Cousins stuff during the combine. And so I'm wondering if, we'll pick up on some other things this time. Because again, I have no idea who the Falcons are going to get a quarterback this time. Like I could make an educated guess last time it was going to be Kirk Cousins. This time it's just like, oh, I have no idea who is going to be that bridge quarterback or that new starter or whatever the case may be. So we will see on that. So Tyson Bagent conversations could be on the horizon, as well as several other Bears players, right? In a world where the Falcons trade Jesse Bates, do they replace him with a guy like Jaquan Brisker, who's going to be a free agent or something like that? So who knows at this point in time? But, even though we know the Falcons need a veteran linebacker like Tremaine Edmunds, do you need to go after a veteran like that? Especially when you have a draft class as deep as this 2026 draft class at the linebacker position. And we'll talk about that as we continue and wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. Now, the pressure is high in the NFL, and so it is in your workplace with deadlines overflowing inboxes and that one position you have to fill sitting wide open. When the pressure is on, you need the right hire. Indeed is all you need. Indeed Sponsored Jobs is going to help you reach the right people who actually fit what you're looking for with the right skills, experience, and location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your posts. Over the next minute that I'm talking to you, companies like yours will have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And you can get a $75 sponsored job credit and to help, give your job the premium placement it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And we like to simplify in the new year. And one way you can do that is with easy, reliable dinner plans. That's why I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Home Chef. Home Chef's going to take the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients right to your door with easy to follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease. It's easy to see why. Meals come ready to fit your schedule with a wide variety of options, from family-sized meals to quick lunches, and there are plenty of options that fit different dietary choices. And also, if you're looking to save time and money, Home Chef is going to help you. Customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. So for a limited time, Home Chef is offering my listeners 50% off your first box plus free shipping and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com for half off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive that free dessert. And if you've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person, FanDuel is going to give you that chance to make that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. You use your profit boost on an NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. They got you. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team's going to make that deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in, especially coming off the All-Star break. Picking that team that's going to make that deep run for the championship or conference title. It adds an extra layer of excitement for every game down the stretch. And now not only can your pick win you cash, it can send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So I do plan at some point, potentially tomorrow on the pod, to do a deeper dive on the prospects that could be on the Falcons' radar at linebacker, especially in those first few rounds. But by all accounts, this is one of the deepest linebacker classes that we've had in a decade. And it feels very optimistic. You know, we sit here in February and we'll see how it all plays out in April. But, you know, we feel very optimistic, you know, with the new brass taking over and, you know, that they're going to take advantage of how deep this class is, right? Now, the question, of course, is going to be, are they going to be looking for a starter in this year's draft, or are they going to be looking for a backup linebacker? And I said this earlier this month when we were breaking down the linebackers in our positional review, that I do think the Falcons should be looking to add 3 linebackers this offseason. Now, one of those 3 could be Kaden Elliss, or it could be Tremaine Edmunds. Basically, whoever they decide to start next to Divine Diablo should be one of those 3. But I feel like, you know, you need to be able to elevate your depth at that linebacker position with at least 2 new backups in addition to whoever you decide to start this year. I doubt you're going to go out there and get 3 rookies, but, you know, there's certainly a world where that combination is 2 rookies and a veteran, or 2 veterans and a rookie, you know. And it's not just this linebacker class that's so deep. It's the tight end class, it's the edge class, it's the cornerback class. I've heard all of these classes. Oh, this is a deep year for this guy, right? And that's kind of the tale of this draft, where it's like there's only a handful of positions that are like really strong at the top. And it's usually like one guy that people like it, you know, and then it's just like, oh, well, you know, you really kind of want to be picking in round 2 or round 3 with some of these positions more so than picking in round 1. But, you know, we'll see if the Falcons can take advantage of that. And, you know, we'll see ultimately, you know, I'll be able to confirm this by the time we get to April, more likely, once I get more eyes on more guys on tape. By then, as you guys well know, if you're an everydayer of this podcast, you know, my pre-draft process is I want to know a little bit about a lot of guys, right? And then post-draft, once the Falcons make their selections, I want to know a lot about a handful of guys, right? However many. Hopefully it's more than one handful when it comes to how many draft picks the Falcons have this year. So we'll see if the Falcons can take advantage of this linebacker class, but it does feel very optimistic that they'll come away with at least one athlete from this draft class, either a backup or a starter, you know, a backup that they can groom to be a starter, you know, and whatnot. And so, you know, as today, as of Thursday, that many of you are listening or watching this, you know, we're probably finding out what this linebacker class is made of from an athletic standpoint with the measurements and whatnot. And that's probably what we'll be getting into on our next episode, diving into the Thursday workouts, the D tackles, the edges, the linebackers, right? Who stood out, who, you know, is creating buzz, who am I sort of earmarking and basically saying, okay, well, once I get to that position group, and we get more in depth, those are the guys I need to watch because of, you know, some of their athletic testing makes them, you know, particularly at the linebacker position, because we know historically speaking, Jeff Ulbrich just loves his athletes, right? And he says, like, I'll take a raw piece of clay at linebacker and we'll develop that guy, right? That was a big thing with Jamie and Sherwood, right, in New York and whatnot. They took a guy that was a safety in college at Auburn, I believe, and then basically developed him as a linebacker. And I say that, you know, we're not going to get into the linebacker stuff, but we'll leave here where it's like, if the Falcons had the 13th overall pick and Sonny Styles, the Ohio State linebacker, who basically has that same exact background as a former safety that got converted to linebacker, like, I feel pretty good that we'd be talking seriously about Sonny Styles being the Falcons' first pick in this draft, assuming he's there. There's no guarantee that he's going to be there at pick 13, but we'd be having a real conversation about, like, yeah, you let Kaden Elliss go because you can get Sonny Styles at 13 is probably what we would be having. But of course, you know, unfortunately, that's not going to be the case because of certain, individuals that should go nameless that may or may not belong to terrorist organizations that decided in their infinite wisdom that they would trade that first round pick. So, that's where we're going to leave it. I'm going to keep throwing shade as much as possible, guys, all off season long. So if you want to hear more shade for the former decision makers here in Atlanta, continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Of course, check out Locked On NFL, Locked On NFL Draft, Locked On NFL Scouting. They will have you covered with all the big stories coming out of the combine, as well as the guys that are making money or guys that are burning money. I forget how they say it on Locked On NFL Draft. It's like money makers and bag getter. Go check out Locked On NFL Draft. They will break it down. I'm not going to try to steal their steez on this podcast. So check out Locked On NFL Draft, as well as other shows. And of course, check out the Everydayer Club. You get an ad-free version of Locked On Falcons, premium Discord access, and so much more at the link in the description below at lockedonfalcons.supercast.com. It is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.